It is so good to be back in this pulpit, but especially so during this Advent season. I've always loved to preach during Advent, and this year is particularly meaningful as my husband and I are in our own Advent season, halfway to meeting our first child, who will be born appropriately around Easter. I've been waiting for so long to be here in this exact moment, and still it's hard to trust that we'll get to hold this baby in April. Every doctor's appointment, every sonogram, I cannot shake the fear that they'll tell me, "You're not pregnant, it's just some gas. Why would you think that?" My nightmares are the opposite of the classic test student study for exam. Instead, they're dreams about coming up empty-handed after so much time and effort. So I can't help but to wonder if Elizabeth had similar dreams. An angel can come from on high to announce your pregnancy directly to your face, and still a long journey with infertility will inject a healthy dose of anxiety and disbelief and suspicion. It's why Sarah laughs at the angelic visitor's announcement in Genesis, and it's why Zechariah questions Gabriel earlier in Luke. I find it interesting that Luke gives us two back-to-back stories of the angel Gabriel announcing miraculous pregnancies, and the response from each person is the same, but Gabriel's reaction is very different. Zechariah wonders, "How will I know that this is so? For I'm an old man, and my wife is getting on in years." For his healthy skepticism, Gabriel makes him mute until his son is born. But then, when Elizabeth is 6 months pregnant, Gabriel reappears, this time to Mary. She also wonders, "How can this be, since I'm a virgin?" And instead of making her mute, Gabriel just answers her question. Does Gabriel think that one of these responses is more legitimate than the other? Why is Mary's skepticism acceptable, but Zechariah's isn't? After all, Zechariah and Elizabeth have decades of lived experience to the contrary. They know that women Elizabeth's age don't get pregnant, especially after years and years of infertility. Their doubt is perfectly reasonable. They've already made peace with their family of two, and now they have to make peace with a very different reality. They're going to have a son, they're going to become parents in their old age, and they're going to have to teach him everything that they know quickly because at their age, they'll be lucky to make it to his bar mitzvah. They won't get to see their baby boy become John the Baptist, prophet in the wilderness, that we'll hear from next week. They have to make peace with not reaching the finish line. As much as April feels like the finish line for me, the great moment when years of prayers will be answered in our child's first breath, I know it's only the beginning of something new. The finish line, we imagine, is only ever the beginning of something new, and the work is never finished after all. And that can get disheartening, especially when the finish line we're talking about is a world made right, made whole, made perfect in the love of God. And we want to celebrate big wins like desegregation and marriage equality and the first underrepresented person to serve in a role, as though these are finish lines in and of themselves. But we know that these are just milestones, and there's a long road ahead, and sometimes it feels like we're walking that road one step forward and 2 steps back. And so in a society that values efficiency and linear time and individualism and results, we bemoan what feels like failure. But it's only failure when viewed on our own small timelines. Tim Okund's work on the characteristics of white supremacy culture has really shifted my thinking in the past few years, since these things are often taken for granted as universal norms and values. So I've had to do a lot of unlearning, things that I didn't know, but it has been so freeing to let these things go. Because some of these characteristics, such as perfectionism, a sense of urgency, either-or thinking, and individualism, contribute to our burnout by making us believe that we have to be the ones to reach the finish lines ourselves. It has to be me to do it. It's win or lose, life or death, success or failure. And when success by our standards is out of reach, it's real easy to just stop trying. It's too big, it's too hard, it'll never work. And so this either-or, urgent, perfectionist, individualist thinking makes us forget the wisdom of the Talmud. It says, you are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. Rather than choosing between finishing or never starting, we build on what has been given to us that we might hand it on to the next generation. We don't have to see the finish line to take pride in what we've done, because this is not a race, it's a relay. And no matter how many steps you took before handing off that baton, no matter how quickly or slowly you move while doing it, you're part of the success whenever that may come, whatever that may look like. So although John the Baptist's parents will die when he's a child, they are still a vital part of raising the man who will pave the way for the Messiah. Their labor is not in vain just because they don't get to witness their son's first sermon or the miracles that Jesus will perform. Their love for their son, their blessing over him in his first few days, will lay the foundation for who he is to become. When Zechariah speaks his first words in 9 months, he starts with naming what God has done, what God is doing, and what God will do through this newborn baby. This prayer, lullaby, this prophecy is similar to many of the Psalms in that way. We have a long history of remembering what God has brought us through so we can notice where God is moving now and have confidence that God will continue to show up even after we're gone. This is how we make peace with never seeing our deepest dreams and desires come to fruition. This is how architects have created blueprints for buildings they will never see completed. This is how we dare to dream in the face of despair. Remember what God has brought us through. Remember the garden. Remember the Exodus. Remember the wilderness. Remember the manna and quail and water springing forth from a rock. Remember the exile. Remember the new roots planted in a strange place. Remember the return. Remember the rebuilding. Remember the promises. Remember the miracles. Remember the feet washed, the meal shared, the bread broken, and the blood shed. Remember the empty tomb. Remember the times when the Spirit was in our lungs. Remember the answered prayers. Remember the dreams fulfilled. Remember, this is not the first pandemic our church family has endured. Remember that even then, even in the wilderness, even in the exile, even when there was no air in our lungs, God was with us. And if we can remember that God was with us in the past, there is no reason to believe that this has changed. As God was with us then, God is surely with us now. We just have to notice the places where they're stirring. One of my favorite new hymns is Audrey Assad's Your Peace Will Make Us One. This prophetic reimagination of the battle hymn of the Republic names the places where God is moving. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. You are speaking truth to power. You are laying down our swords, replanting every vineyard till a brand new wine is poured. Your peace will make us one. I have seen you in our home fires burning with a quiet light. You are mothering and feeding in the wee hours of the night. Your gentle love is patient. You will never fade or tire. Your peace will make us one. In the beauty of the lilies, you were born across the sea, with a glory in your bosom that is still transfiguring, dismantling our empires till each one of us is free. Your peace will make us one. Like most prophetic words, they are unbelievable at times. God is laying down our swords. Present tense, really? I can't believe it. Until I see Shane Claiborne turning surrendered guns into garden tools, taking seriously and literally Isaiah's prophecy that they will beat their swords into plowshares, dismantling empires till each one of us is free. Present tense, really? I can't believe it. Until I see death sentences commuted and wrongfully convicted people walking out of prison. Just because there are places where hatred and greed and fear and isolation are clinging to power doesn't mean that God isn't at work in the world here and now. Just because the work is unfinished doesn't mean that it's abandoned. Even when the work is too big, too long, too hard, even here, we are still dreaming and building, laying a foundation for future generations. And if God has shown up in the past, and if God is continuing to show up even now, we can have confidence that God will continue to show up even after we're gone. Like Paul, allow yourself to believe that the one who began a good work in you will bring it to completion. Maybe not on the timeline you'd like, maybe not even in your own lifetime. But by the day of Jesus Christ, Paul says, God will see the work through. And like Zechariah, allow yourself to dream big dreams that may never happen in your lifetime. But lay the foundation anyway for those coming after you to build on, and proclaim that God is working in the world from age to age. Amen.